Hello and welcome to the Gladiator Podcast, your place for Gladiator news and content. Here today we have a very special thing. We're live for the first time. No mess ups. And we're here today to do a thing. We're going to be talking about Historic Anthology 5. Here with me today, as
always, is UFO.
As well as
I'm Seismic Lawns.
And not to forget,
this is Blightning.
And I think I forgot to mention, but I'm Joker Boney. And yeah, we're going to be doing live set review. This is going to be interesting. We're going to be talking about the card, showing you every single card in the Historic Anthology. We're going to talk about them. And it's live, so anything can happen.
Yeah, anything.
Anything.
And with that, unless any of you have anything else
happen.
you'd like to say, we can go to the first card.
Let's just jump into it.
Sounds great.
I believe you start, Joker.
Yes. Our today is Ellaschnorn for 5, a white, and a white. Or Ellaschnorn and Cenobite for 5.
Anyone else hearing some
White,
weird?
we get a 4/7.
I think you're cutting out on my end.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just Discord though. Very well.
Okay.
We're going to assume everything's fine. It has vigilance. Other creatures get +2. Other creatures you control get +2/+2, and creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. Seismic, tell me about this card.
So I am very excited for Ellaschnorn's potential as the either best or second best hit off of cards like Transmogrify, which essentially exile your own creatures in order to find the next creature card in your deck. And if the only creatures you're running in your deck are, say, Ellaschnorn and Craterhoof Behemoth, you can utilize those effects to their best possible use. And Ellaschnorn, while it doesn't have as much of an instant win the game potential as a card like Craterhoof Behemoth, it does have the ability to completely wreck your opponent's board at the same time as buffing your own board to, frankly, a gross extent. This, if you can land it in any situation, it completely wipes out aggro. It will most of the time take care of mid-range decks to a point that you can get in for a lot more damage, and it just in general hoses a lot of strategies more than it seems at first glance.
Yeah. Ellaschnorn really wants you to think that they're elegant, but they are a hammer on a board state.
Yeah,
no. This card just makes combat hell for your opponent, and ignoring that I'm going to slam this directly into big white, I'm definitely interested to see how people end up cheating it out, because I've played a bit of the Transmogrify stuff. I think right now my favorite target for that is Scholar of the Lost Trove. Because getting to do stuff with Scholar of the Lost Trove has been really fun recently. But yeah, just getting out an early Ellaschnorn is going to do a lot of work against creature decks.
Yeah, and that's kind of the case with all these praetors, right? They're just their effect is known to be very good. The question is, when do they come in? Again, as I've always been preaching, timing is kind of everything in this format, and 7 mana often is a little too late to matter without some sort of help, either with that, whether that be reanimation or some sort of acceleration in ramp.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see if there's a green white or something where just you just hyper accelerate with dorks, and then just all your dorks
Mirari's Wake and sort of stuff.
To Mirari's Wake, yeah. It's every way to just make it where your mana just. Did you know that Nissa, who shakes the world with this, makes 5/5s?
Oh yeah. That's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of busted stuff with this. And I think that's true of all of the Praetors, but I think Ellaschnorn may be the most immediately impactful Praetor, which makes a lot of use for it as a reanimation target, and it might be the better between it and Shieldred.
There's possibility, absolutely. It just like
Yeah.
as you mentioned, this is the one with the most immediate impact, and just
Mhm.
as UFO says, like, I'm very curious to see how this card functions in the decks that look to cheat it out, or just like get it out real fast. Like if they can get it down versus aggro in a timely manner, then it could be a big deal. Otherwise, it's probably just gonna be like it's a 7-drop that ends the game. You played a 7-drop, you end the game.
Could also see this in like some sort of like Abzan like mid-range reanimator deck.
Right.
That sounds like a fun time. Where like you are both getting an Ellaschnorn on turn 4 and then also still having a decent like base with which you can get value off of it, and also maybe just hard cast it if you're playing enough dorks.
Maybe just hard cast it.
So, big effect.
Yeah. Speaking of cards you should probably not hard cast, but we'll eventually end up doing anyways. Our next
I
card
take
is
that as a
Jin
challenge.
Gataxia. I mean, Reclamation exists, so I'm going to do it. Our next card is Jin Gataxius, or Augur. Jin Gataxius is a whopping 10 mana, 8 and then double blue for a 5/4 legendary creature, Praetor, with Flash. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards, and each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7, which, assuming they don't have a way to remove maximum hand size, means they're discarding their hand at cleanup step. I don't know. I kind of love this card. I think it fills a similar role as some of the stuff we've been talking about with Ellaschnorn for reanimation and for transmogrify nonsense. I'm not actually going to play this in Wilderness Reclamation decks most of the time, I think. Because as much fun as that sounds, it's probably not necessary. But we'll see. I've been playing plenty enough Reclamation, and it'll happen eventually.
I think not necessary is kind of the story for a lot of these Praetors, unfortunately. They suffer from what is, I would call, old card design, where they were attempting to make them at least somewhat balanced with high mana costs or weird stat lines otherwise.
Remember when things cost more than 3 mana?
Though, I will say, I was... I think it was like yesterday when we were talking about this set that I realized that Jin Gataxius had Flash. I've been thinking about that card for years, actual years, and I never realized it had Flash. I always thought it had Flying.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't have Flying, but I really like Jin Gataxius as a really dumb reanimator target. It's not great.
Yeah,
but
it's dumb in a few different ways of interpreting that word.
My favorite thing to do with Jin Gataxius, though, is that end step trigger allows you to both refill your hand of reanimator spells and then discard cards from that hand to then fuel those reanimator spells later. Granted, you could just be winning the game with a reanimation spell, but who wants to do that when you could instead draw 7 cards?
I think this more than any
winning
other
nonsense when there's value to be had.
I think this more than any other card is going to push whether or not a Titan's Nest deck exists in this format.
Ooh.
Dang it, Joker, now I have to build that.
But it's like, but seriously, like, I think that's the kind of like sort of like, still sometimes you'll reanimate this out, but if you can pay blue for this and refill your hand, maybe discard some cards to cast a counter spell, or like some like. What I'm saying is, like, I think there might be a Titan's Nest deck in this format where it does something like that, where it focuses on gaining value and like grinding out the game. And I think this card, more than any other card, is just going to be like, if that deck exists in this format, this is going to be the card that made it happen.
I think in general, if you can get this on turn 5, that's when you want to be doing it. And there's a surprising amount of ways to do that right now.
Mm-hmm. I would note that while Taxius is able to be cast pretty early on with Wilderness Reclamation active, due to the fact that Wilderness Reclamation works within the end step, you will not get the draw trigger, which is one of the reasons that people aren't as interested in doing that, but you get to cast the spell in the first place, and
that's what's important.
What matters. Yeah, that is what matters. And then, like, the other thing is just that it's a 5/4, and that's not very big.
It's tiny.
For
so small.
Toughness is almost trivial at this point.
This comes from the good old times of Magic, is when a 10 mana blue spell can't beat a 5 mana green spell in combat.
Play more red cap melee.
Yeah, or Demon Bolt, or
Thundering Rebuke.
Yeah, Thundering Rebuke, Lava Coil.
We have Lightning Axe right now.
Yeah, Lightning Axe. Kicked Shivan Fire.
This dies to a lot of things.
It dies to a lot, and I think that's going to be the breaking point of whether or not it can do enough. But just like, it has potential to be a very powerful tool.
Yeah,
like
you
pay for are pitifully small, and they don't block well. There's just you kind of would prefer Jin-Gitaxias to be a enchantment.
Hey, we have that card on Arena thanks to Theros Beyond Death. We could make this an enchantment.
Well, an enchantment without being... is there... Yeah, there's that thing that makes things enchantments and nothing else.
Yeah.
We got there. Okay. Speaking of getting there...
Taxes an enchantment?
Speaking of... and the other thing, right, Jin-Gitaxias is a target that people are going to be very greedy in trying to reanimate, because it draws cards, and that, for some reason, can be seen as tantamount to, focused over winning the game in many cases, to poor effect often, but that's not here nor there. A good reanimation target, though, is Shieldred, Whispering One. 5 black for a 6/6 with Swamp Walk. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they sacrifice a creature. This is a reanimation target.
It slices and dices.
Keeps the engine going after you use your one reanimation spell on it.
I think my biggest issue with Shieldred is that my graveyard runs dry too quickly. And so, by the time my opponent is like, okay, if they reanimate another thing, I'm dead, my graveyard's empty of like good things to reanimate, and so I have to start reanimating like Mire Triton.
Oh no.
That just gets to reanimate.
I'm so sad for you.
Feel pity for me, UFO.
There's no pity on this podcast.
The fact that it causes sacrifice on the next upkeep means that while this does die to sorcery speed removal, it also still has a very sizable impact with sorcery speed removal. And we love to see it.
And
also, Swamp Walk is going to...
I had to
Swamp Walk is going to matter
meeting.
A surprising amount, especially with triumphs. I'm going to lose to this thing being able to attack me with impunity because I'm playing a Zagoth Triumph in one of my lists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the triumphs do have that off-type aspect to it, and this is the first instance of Landwalk we've gotten on Arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that this card is just always unblockable if I'm playing against it. Like, it's just so big, and also I'm running
A lot of
enough
the
swamps in every deck.
A lot of the common removal spells in the format don't really hit 6 toughness very well.
Yeah.
A lot of people are
is-
reaching up to 5, Soulseer and a few others in that range. 6, though, means you're, against red especially, you're needing at least 2 spells to stop it.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is
There's blocking
Gargaroth
it,
size.
and-
It's Gargaroth size. Like you can still play Perforos' intervention, which I think I've been doing a lot more now on my red decks
yeah,
because of 6 toughness. Yeah. And like
Just
that's
find
kind
low
of it.
thing.
Yeah,
It does dodge a suite of removal that has been popular recently, though. Like Doomblade misses this, Cast Down misses this.
Eliminate misses this. Like,
Yeah,
Fatal Push.
Fatal Push.
Fatal push.
a lot of black removal misses this. The good
And then,
black
like, if you're up
removal
against
is still
the popular Jeskai decks, it's basically Swords
Mhm.
and Plowshares or bust.
swords
and
or
Deck and
like
Stone.
Oh, Deck
Yeah.
and Stone is sorcery speed, so you're still getting at 1 trigger.
Oh, right. You're still getting value off of it. Yeah.
Also,
like this is a tough cookie.
Side note, I would like to submit my petition for Swords to Plowshares as the most powerful card from the archive to come into our format.
I think I agree. Yeah, it's
I
insane.
think that
Yeah.
very likely. I think lightning, there's an argument for lightning bolt, but swords is definitely like it is.
Yeah.
It is a fight between the
Swords
two.
is so good.
Question
Yeah.
for you all. Speaking of swords being the most powerful card out of the mystical archives, it's mainly because it has a low cost, right?
Mostly.
Mostly.
And so, ergo,
Yeah.
low costs mean generally more power. And by that logic, our next card, Urabrask the Hidden, is the strongest of the praetors because it is only 5 mana. At 3
All
red,
right,
red.
I'm not gonna.
I'm
I'm not
I
gonna
can't
take
let
the
this stand.
slander.
No, I actually think you're kind of
Reading the
right.
card.
Hold up.
I
I think Seismic speaks to truth. Like, actually, though.
let
Like,
me
actually, though,
explain
yes.
by reading the card.
You're correct, but that logic doesn't always pan out.
Urabrask the Hidden is 3 red for a 4/4 legendary praetor. It has creatures you control have haste, and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. And this card, I think it either is at the same kind of level as a card like Samut the Tested, or it might actually surpass it just because of that second ability. Making creatures enter the battlefield tapped is insane. It's such a good ability, and on top of that, it's a 4/4 with haste. It kills people, and it lets all of your other things have haste, which in specific decks is really important.
Also,
Yeah.
Joker.
I want to play this in like a Boros big range list where you do this into a Baneslayer.
I was going to be
Yeah.
all coy about it, and you just said it outright.
So the biggest thing with this card, there is a point to be said that like this is not as strong as other 5s that see play in this kind of slot. This is not as strong as Quarrybringer. This is not as strong as the dumb Goldspan Dragon. Like, this is fighting in a very competitive spot, but this is one of the best cards if you can ramp into it even slightly. Getting this on turn 4 or getting this on turn 3, that is how this card becomes a backbreaker. This is how, like, people have played cards like Kinjali Sunwing to have creatures opponents and have creatures to be tapped. This card just gets to do that while also being a haste emblem. So if you're playing, we talked about Boros already, like Boros big range, or even a smaller
Just
Boros
Boros
list like
mid-range.
Boros D&T, where you're just like, oh, I give my Thalia and Archon of America haste. That's good. And I got it in on turn 4 because of my thanks. It was like, getting this one of praetors, getting this down early just ends the game. And
Also,
it's
is
so
more
much more easy
possible.
down early. Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible
That-
to get down early. Because
Yeah.
I can say 100% if Boros mid-range could consistently say, I have Ellaschnorn in play by turn 5, I would say, show me that deck because I want to play it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
And
that's
then
not
that same
happening.
Boros mid-range list says, I can bring Urbras down on turn 3, and everyone's like, oh shit. All right.
I also think Urabrask giving creatures haste without spending any extra mana is a very powerful effect. And the biggest hindrance on other cards that have that effect is that they are not impactful to the board in other ways. Urabrask the Hidden doesn't have that problem, and it has that impact inherently with it. And so it's at least something to consider. I don't think it's going to be like a super high played mythic, but it does merit some discussion and some consideration in larger red mid-range decks and decks that want that haste specifically.
I just want to curve this into Galta.
Oh,
I'd also just
Yeah.
note that I
Yeah?
would request the praetors. Most people know because of how they exist within a format called Commander. And within that, Urabrask is not popular because instead of doing things that 7 mana to 10 mana cards do, it does things that 6 mana cards do, basically. And that's better for this format than it is for that format. And speaking of better for that format than this format,
Sorry, I do just want to point
yeah,
out
go ahead.
how you said this format named Commander. This thing you might not have heard of. It's pretty niche compared to us.
Yeah. Niche,
Yes.
niche format
Yeah.
Commander compared to Chad format Gladiator.
Not even on Arena. Can't be that good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Uh,
what's this card that you think of for this weird format called Commander?
Possibly the most popular one of the 5 in Commander is Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger. 6 green for a 7/6 trample that says whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. And whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land does not untap during its controller's next untap step. So, this card, the text box of this card is great. It's great. But it's a card that ramps you mana after you've gotten to 8 mana, which in this format is I'm not gonna say pointless.
It's a bit redundant.
Yeah, I just didn't have any other words to say than pointless.
We do have a much better example of why ramping after you've already ramped is not a great idea. And that card is Nyx Bloom Ancient, which is 7
Don't play
mana
that card
and
ever.
yeah,
Yeah.
7 mana and it triples all your mana after you play it. And that card's
Also has trample.
also like so
For some reason.
it's
Yeah, and I haven't seen that
Not
card since I
good.
built Gauntlets of Light combo back in like summer, and it shouldn't have been in that deck.
No.
Yeah.
man,
the-
I
the
need to
card
rebuild
is
that deck.
actively bad.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
I need to
the
rebuild
aspect of being able to ramp is kind of pointless with Vorinclex because you've already ramped as much as you're going to need to. However, the last ability on Vorinclex, the being able to make your opponent's lands not untap every other turn, that is fairly important if you can get Vorinclex down early, and that, again, we're like a broken record. If you can get these down early, they're obviously great, but specifically being able to land this on turn, say, turns 4 through 6, means that if you're up against a control deck, they need to counter it or they're going to lose a turn. Or if you're against a lot of decks, if you don't counter it, you are taking a turn off to be able to answer it later. And that is not nothing, but I also don't know if it's enough to get it into heavy ramp decks, because what else could you be playing at this mana? Oh, I don't know, Craterhoof?
Yeah,
I do
Or
think
there
there
are-
is one. Sorry, I think there is one very specific deck that wants this, and it is the red-green hyper channel deck.
I don't even know if that's true,
I-
but sure.
I can see
so
it.
so hear me out. Well, it's like, so that deck in general, at least when I've looked at it before and when I've forward, you were trying to get out the most dumb things possible starting on turn 4. This is a thing where, like, as mentioned, like, if this gets down on turn 4 or even on turn 3, if you do elf on 1, the channel on point being is, like, this is one of those cards where if you get this out early, this turns on the other big spells in your hand while also being a good channel target.
Yeah,
Notably,
in that
I
deck,
do
I think
think
it
that-
makes sense.
I think that 6 is kind of the sweet spot for channel.
Oh, absolutely.
Where at 4, it's kind of, channel is kind of just a dark ritual. But once you get to 6 or higher, channel starts becoming, and goes from a good ramp spell to an insane ramp spell, where Vorinclex fits really nicely into that hole, but it is so much worse without channel, and
Oh, absolutely.
it seems to
And I
me
think
like
that's
it's a
the biggest
classic
thing.
case of, like, don't play bad cards for channel's sake.
Yeah, you
And
don't.
I
Yeah.
think that might be the case, but I think it's at least worth exploring just on the bare that, like, this fills a hole that isn't really fillable at deck, being light on pips comparative to other effects that we have, while also being a mana doubler that fixes for red mana.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
One last. I think
I'm
we're good
on
on this
board
card.
with the idea, but
Hmm.
I think if we're
It's
willing to ramp, we've got something better to do.
we
Oh,
do,
sure.
and it's much cheaper.
Yeah. One last point on this card. Wilderness Reclamation means I don't even have to pay the mana tax for it. Checkmate Phyrexians. Let's get to the commands.
Speaking of getting to the commands, the first one is Atarka's command, which is red and a green for an instant. And it says, choose 2 of the following gross options. First, your opponents can't gain life this turn. Second, Atarka's command deals 3 damage to each opponent. Third, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. And fourth, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain reach until end of turn. This
Right,
card's gonna
so-
kill me.
So this is the first two modes. This is just Skullcrack, which is two mana. Players this turn prevent whatever deal 3 damage to face for 2 mana. So
Yeah, I think
this
it
is
also
just-
stops damage prevention. But
yeah, this one basically gets to be a Skullcrack, just being like, oh, you just you was swung with your Baneslayer, you don't gain life.
Yeah.
And then also deal 3 to your face. Perfect.
Or if you're against
This-
Baneslayers specifically,
No,
you can
I
also
would
just give your
actually-
team reach.
Yeah, I would actually
Yeah.
target if you have a creature in play that is able to attack, this is 2 mana for 4 damage base.
Yeah.
Which
That's its
is a very
worst
good
case
rate.
scenario, essentially. Like,
Worst abs case.
Yeah. It's cards so
Like-
much damage.
worst case, it is a Skullcrack, which is a good card. And it's almost never a Skullcrack. It is almost always significantly better than a Skullcrack. and
Well-
its versatility and the fact that every mode kills your opponent.
Well, you put a land into play so I can play my 4-drop on turn 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ramp out that
Give
Urabras.
creatures
What
Yeah,
if,
give
what if
creatures
Growth
reach
so you
Spiral
can blow out
instead
your
hit
flyer's opponent?
for 3?
Yeah, like Rose Spiral getting to bolt instead of drawing is just
This card
It's
so
ruins
dumb.
standard, and it is the
Was-
card
was
I am
it
most
this one?
fearful. Yes.
Oh right, this was before the Collected Company came in and made it almost obsolete.
No, this came in with Collected Company, but
Oh.
it was before there were good things to put in with Collected Company.
Right, they need
Yeah.
like Reflector Mage and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But Atarka's command is going to absolutely wreak havoc on this format.
Tangent. I just kind of imagine Reflector Mage sitting there with like a mortar-sized hole in its chest because it got caught in the crossfire of Emrakul.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also Reflector Mage should have gone
It was
as
a very
well.
good card, but like, you know it was not on the same level as the other cards that were banned in that particular announcement.
Yeah, I remember
Sure.
my first time looking at the standard ban list from like when I started playing, which was a good bit after that, and reading Reflector Mage in comparison to everything else and being like, I guess.
Yeah, it was like how people reacted to Nisu Shakes the World for a little while on our ban list,
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
or
just don't
Nexus
like
of Fate, but most people
Yeah,
didn't like Nexus of Fate.
Don't remind me of Nexus.
Listen,
let's
my
think
job
about
This is a no Nexus
pensive and
podcast.
sad lightning.
let's think about a different instant in that case, being Dramoka's command. It's green-white for an instant, and it says choose 2 again. Prevent all damage target instant or sorcery spell would deal this turn. Target player sacrifices an enchantment. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and target creature you control fights target creature you don't control.
I was going to say, as the throw, talking about instants that are going to make lightning sad, target player sacrifices Wilderness Reclamation.
Oh, that's
Yeah, no, this card's gonna ruin me in many ways.
So I would
Target
also
player
just note,
sacrifices Search for Azcanta.
by the way,
oh
Prevent
There's
all
a card
damage,
that's been
expansion,
played.
explosion would deal.
there's a card that's been played fairly to really good success recently in a lot of decks called Inscription of Abundance. And why is it so good? Well, it's instant speed, and it has 3 modes. And one of the modes is put 2+1 counters on target creature, and one is target creature you control fights. Those 2 combined is what makes the kicked aspect of Inscription of Abundance so powerful. The life gain is
Yeah.
nice, but more secondary. And Dramoka's command for 2 mana is almost a fully kicked Inscription of Abundance for 3 less mana.
Yeah.
yeah, this
Also-
is 2 mana Hunt the Week, which there's been times in this format where I've been either playing or thinking about playing Hunt the Week legitimately. Dramoka's command is pretty insane.
I
It's
think
not
Andre K might have gone into shock when they saw this card was coming to our format.
Yeah.
Yeah, that green-white mid-range deck gets so much value out of this. It has
Also,
also been
just-
pointed out that this prevents all damage from my red rats, and
Yeah,
okay.
you lose Wilderness Reclamation and your Magma Quake does nothing.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you wanted the Hour of Devastation to get rid of my indestructible creatures? Too bad.
Yeah.
This card's gonna do
Fun.
a lot.
Yeah,
all
I
the
think-
modes are
okay.
all the modes are relevant, and like the worst thing this does is give you one more point of damage and then get rid of a blocker is usually the worst that this does.
and that's more than good enough. I
Yeah.
think that
Oh yeah.
green-white mid-range, any deck with green and white in it wants this card.
Yeah. I think
Speaking of, sorry, did you have another point
you
on this
want to
card?
play at least like more than 6 creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably maybe 10 is fine.
Yeah,
Band
I think you can get
control
away with this
might
even
not,
in
but-
some versions of Bant. Like if you're
Well, in Bant, this you use it for the top 2 modes.
Yeah.
And like
and then
even
sometimes
there,
you put a +1/+1
sometimes
on
you're
your
playing-
dream crawler because why not?
Yeah.
yeah,
Also, it's
getting
kind
to
of funny
fight
how
things with
Mulligans
God
Command
Eternal Kefnet.
very potentially can just entirely invalidate Atarka's command in the right board state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank God for that.
Remind yourselves to
Speaking-
read Banefire before you cast Banefire. Just not speaking
Oh,
from
yeah.
experience or anything. Don't worry about it.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Next card.
yeah. Let's move to cards that make me less sad. Mulligans Command. I'm gonna
sure?
enjoy this one a lot more.
This makes you less
No,
sad?
I play with this card more. I don't play green white. I'm Mulligan's Command is 1 black-red for an instant that has choose 2. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Target player discards a card. Destroy target artifact. And Mulligan's Command deals 2 damage to any target. This card's also real good. Instant speed discard is sometimes going to matter. That's not the important part here. This gets
It's a
to
rare thing in Magic.
sometimes blow up. Yeah, it's rare and for good reason because it lets you just make your opponent discard a card during draw step, and now they have nothing in hand to play.
And it also
this
like
gets
kills
to
a thing.
potentially. Oh yeah, it just can also kill a thing while doing that, and can also get you back a card that they might have dealt with. It's just so much value.
So we were getting very excited about Prismari Command. For good
Mhm.
reason. The card's insane. Mulligan's Command works on a very similar axis to Prismari Command, except that everything it does, instead of trying to fuel combo, instead kills your opponent.
Yeah, this
I
does
would
more
also
to.
just note that Mulligan's Command has two of the good aspects of Prismari Command without the terrible blue stuff, and instead
Hey!
brings
Gross.
in some very nice black flavor in return target creature card and target player discards a card.
Not to mention,
But I like the
well,
blue stuff.
talking about that top mode. I am very excited to use this. Target, I don't know, a young pyromancer, a Sedgemoor witch. Any fun cards come to mind that
I mean, I
enjoy
think that's-
casting spells?
those cards would be sweet. I think target any creature card in your graveyard and you're not going to be too sad about it.
Counterpoint.
Yeah.
Target my opponent's Sedgemoor Witch and Young Pyromancer with the bottom mode.
True.
All right.
Also
all right.
agree.
And then bring back ours.
See, I like playing good cards. Pyromancer and Sedgemoor Witch are good cards. The cards around them can be bad, and I can't convince people who play them to stop playing those bad cards, so I don't like them.
That's fair.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of fun stuff going
The more
on, and
Mulligan's
like
fans we get, the more good cards they can play instead of their bad cards. So, you know.
I feel like I'm being subtweeted here.
I feel like there's a throw wanting to happen here, but I don't want to
Talking
just
about
go out
cards
here
that
and
people
talk
are-
about bad
I mean-
cards.
Talking about cards that people like playing, and they are good sometimes. You play them properly. Unlike UFO, who's trying to sell this as a non-playable card, our good friend here is Ojutai's Command, aka Selfie Stick Command. It's 2 blue and a white for an instant. Am I incorrect in assuming?
It's an instant.
It's
It
an
is
instant
instant.
that has 2 modes.
It better be instant.
Return.
God, if this wasn't
Kind
instant.
of.
This is not the worst command here. This one is pretty good. Honestly, it's all right.
It is the worst command.
return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. You life, counter target creature spell, or draw a card. This card is fine. This card, at worst, is gain 4 life or 4 mana for an exclude.
But Joker, I pay 2 and 3 mana for those effects.
Look, I realize, but this does have some good targets.
Flexibility.
Honestly. Depending.
Now, you see, part of the problem with Ojutai's command is that all the other commands were printed with like 4 abilities, right? And then
This has
Ojutai's
4
command came in
abilities.
and has like 2.5.
This has 4 abilities.
Gain 4 life
You
isn't
know
terrible,
that's not
but it's
true.
not good. And then
Yeah.
I would
returning
say,
a creature
this
card.
at least has 3 abilities. We can say 3 abilities.
Gaining 4 life is half an ability, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Okay,
What's
3.5.
the non-ability then?
Return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield in blue.
Return wall.
In blue-white.
I do think that if this was like white-black,
Get back a
and had-
Seagate Stormcaller.
Yeah, get
Yeah.
back Seagate Stormcaller. Man, please get walled soon.
Oh,
All right,
Right.
that getting called out in chat, actual reasonable
Yeah,
thing.
Cat Moosey
Stasis
Cat
Oracle.
Moosey being the smart one here.
yeah.
saying
But
return
just like
Oracle.
honestly, like I so here's the thing. I do not know if I like this in pure blue white, which the other cards have a benefit of being very good in their pure 2 colors, which I agree with. But I think in the 3 color decks, like I love this and well, okay. I enjoy this in Jeskai. I think it can have some very good utility in Jeskai, and I think it's at least worth trying in Bant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also
I
think this
just
gives a
feel
little bit
like-
more credibility to Esper.
I just feel like Ojutai's command is
Possibly,
just
yeah.
really
Yeah.
at odds with itself, and it makes me sad enough that I don't want to play it even if it might be good.
That is fair.
That's,
Also,
that's totally
the fact that I cannot counter my own creature and then return it makes me sad, because at least that would be a funny thing to do.
that. Yeah,
That would be
yeah, all right.
great.
I'll give you that one. I'll give
Okay,
you that
yeah,
one.
now
Yeah.
I'm disappointed in Ojutai's command. I wanted
Yeah.
to counter a creature spell and then non-target return a creature
Although,
card with mana value 2 or less.
Speaking of, back on Kolaghan's command for a second, I have done that before where I've returned a creature card to pitch it because pitching the card got me an effect I wanted.
Like with Cow.
I don't remember what the card was now, but I like remember it's like I had this sick
Please
line where I can return
Don't
it to
use
hand and then
Colgan's
discard
command to
it.
get bartered cow value. That's just going to
Cow.
Watch me
Now
Lightning.
I have to.
It's only 3 mana.
No.
It's
Yeah,
only 3 mana.
you can't get it
unfortunately.
in Cow Tech though.
I can
Yeah.
play it in Cowtech. Watch.
All right.
We've now
All
challenged
right.
UFO.
Good luck with
Um,
that,
All right,
but
UFO.
A card that
Speaking of
can
cards
go
we're going to
into
play in
Cowtech.
Cowtech. All right. High five, Seismic.
Yeah.
Silumgar's command.
Silumgar's command. Let her read it, Seismic. I can't.
Okay. Silumgar's command is 3 blue-black for an instant that says choose 2. Counter non-target creature spell. Return target permanent to its owner's hand. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. And destroy target planeswalker. It's 4 interaction spells in 1 5-mana card.
Would you like to take that first mode again?
Counter not target non-creature spell.
Thank you.
Did I say
Right, we
creature
got
last
there that
time?
time.
I
No,
don't
you said
know what you said, but it
Counter
was definitely
non-target,
wrong.
non-creature spell.
Counter non-target
All right. So there's a plus and minus on that fact. This needs 2 targets at all times to do something, which is like, and it doesn't have a mode that is always like it's always live mode is return target permanent to its owner's hand, which isn't always great. But I'm gonna cast a spell just because this has 3 different modes that get rid of a spell forever, essentially, or like put a spell into a graveyard. This has 3 modes that do, and this has a mode that can sometimes when you Like the time that you return target permanent to its owner's hand, where like you fudge a torrential gear hulk, or they're about to memory with a Narset out or something, like it's gonna happen.
So Silumgar's command.
Notably, this is not using newer design philosophy where that would say non-land permanent.
Yeah,
you can bounce lands. And I fully expect someone to do that with a Teferi emblem on the battlefield. And just be like,
Which
okay,
Teferi emblem?
5 mana Teferi, so draw a card equals exile.
Gotcha.
And just be like, I've gotten rid of the rest of your board, so I'll kill the creature you just played and then also bounce your land.
I mean, you're talking about winning the game with the Teferi emblem.
I just
It's
think that this card
at that point.
I think that the fact that this card can deal with 2 creatures immediately with like the return target permanent and target creature gets -3/-3, I think that is why this card, if it shows up, will be playable. That is the primary thing that it like. But the fact that it also has the other 2 modes, the good versus control, means that like it has a lot of utility. It is 5 mana, but it has a lot of utility.
This is gonna ruin my Merit Lages.
Yeah.
That's not incorrect. The Merit Lages you managed to put into play will die to it.
Hey, I have put a Merit Lage into play in this format.
So yeah, I think both Joker Boney and I have in fairly similar lists.
I have had 3 Merit Lages on board at the same time.
Okay, I can't say I've done that.
I was doing some dumb Spark Double stuff. Don't worry about it.
I assume
I'm not surprised in the least.
Speaking of things that are not that surprising, Ancient Grudge gives us the least surprising joke.
Well, the joke wasn't terrible. It just went on for like three lines too long. You see, when you explain a joke, it loses a lot of the humor. And trying to continue there and make sure that your viewer or your say listener or the person consuming your content going on too long by explaining a joke is a great way to lose their interest and make them not like you.
Yeah, especially Ancient Grudge, kind of the symbol of jokes that go on for just a little bit too long. For the record, Ancient Grudge is 1 in a red for an instant that says destroy target artifact. It flashes back for green, and then it has the following flavor text. If there's anything a werewolf hates, it's a color, especially Avacyn's color, the symbol of her church.
Yeah, and it's been talked about in the Magic community for a while that particular flavor text is uninspired and terrible to the point of it becoming a joke in and of itself and coming back around to being somewhat funny. But meta humor is hard to execute properly, I think. So
I will say
Revelation.
The absolute.
I do want to say one thing on this card's actual quality.
On Ancient Grudge.
Sure.
Now that we've lost all our viewership.
Hey, I was going to say shout out to Twitch chat. We're going to make these jokes run too long. Don't worry about it. Questing Beast is 2 green. 4/4 legendary creature beast.
Someone press the button.
Press the button. It has vigilance, death touch, and haste.
My actual thing that I really like about Ancient Grudge.
Shut up.
No, we do need it. We do need to get the finishing of this
Joker.
card.
Questing Beast can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. And whenever Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls.
Thank you.
So anyway, I like Ancient Grudge in one theoretical deck. And that is Persistent Pain splashing green.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can mill your Ancient Grudge and then have it be an extra card in the graveyard. There's another card that does a similar thing, but for a different type in that same deck, and that's Ray of Revelation. It's 1 and a white for an instant, and it says destroy target enchantment and flashes back for a green.
Yeah, it's Revelation is interesting because no one really remembers that it existed, but it has very similar sideboard uses in many formats to Ancient Grudge. Just that enchantments historically have been a little bit less immediately broken than artifacts.
It should have had more memorably bad flavor text.
True, the flavor text is just kind of sad.
Yeah.
I will say the most disappointing part about Ancient Grudge is that we did get the dog art.
Oh
that
yeah,
would've been good.
the art from Secret Layer Dogs. Yeah.
Yes.
Hold up, I don't remember this art.
Have you not seen it? Have you
I-
not
Oh,
seen
it's
it?
great.
It's
I think
honestly
Secret
it's
Layer
cute.
Dogs
It's
was
so cute.
honestly.
I see it. I see it.
I
Secret
think
Layer
Heck
Dogs
yeah.
was, I think, the
was-
least hyped up Secret Layer that I've.
It was the least
Remember.
hyped up and the least good if you think about it from a card. Like,
Yeah, the card. I looked at the cards and I was like, this art is sweet. I don't care about the cards. I just
Yeah.
didn't.
I don't care about the
And-
cards,
Okay.
and they are dog versions of the. We didn't get Isamaru in this, and that is such a disappointment. All right, so that tells you how much we care
Well, you see,
about
Isamaru
Rays
is
of
a hound,
Revelation
isn't-
and Ancient
isn't it?
Grudge. Sorry?
Yeah.
Did it get typed back to being a dog when dogs started being a thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
hounds
cool.
are dogs.
All hounds are dogs.
Wait,
Yeah.
Speaking of white 1-drops, that can be 2/2s.
there was a Secret Lair April
Thank you,
Fool's
Seismic.
drop.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's been 2.
Yeah.
Anyway, Court
I
Homunculus is a
missed
single
them.
white for an artifact creature, Homunculus. It's a 1/1, but it gets +1/+1 as long as you control another artifact. I'm excited for this card because I've been thinking about trying to make BattleBots a working deck since Tempered Steel came to Arena, and I've
Historic
never been
Anthology one.
convinced. Yeah, the first Historic Anthology, I think.
Yep.
And I've never been convinced that it's good enough in order to craft Tempered Steel. Court Homunculus is another card that gets me ever closer to that line. And God, I hope it's enough this time. I've been really tired of looking at Tempered Steel, looking at an unfinished deck list, sighing, and then closing the deck and never looking at it again.
Speaking of being unfinished, can we take a moment to appreciate this art where we can see how tiny this homunculus is? If you look right near the blue stops and the metal starts, that's
Those are its feetsies.
its feet.
Yes.
And I've killed the podcast. Next card.
But how many
Dragon
arms does it
Storm.
have?
So
No, we're moving on.
0. Next
Uh,
question.
yeah, Dragonstorm.
Dragonstorm. 8 in a red. Sorcery. Search your library for a dragon permanent card. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle.
Yeah.
We have kill
So,
piles.
I
It's 9 mana.
was unreasonably angry at the storm choice for red in the anthology in the archive because, as I said, Grape Shot is the equivalent of eating an entire sleeve of saltines with nothing else. It is boring as fuck, and people like it.
Yeah.
People like
Don't
it.
attack
I like
me like
it.
this.
Yeah.
I have a sleeve of saltines I'm going to be eating later today.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. Actually, I might do club crackers. Similar thing. We get one FX.
Yeah, we get one.
And we spent it on saltines.
You spent it on saltines.
Yes.
Speaking of
yeah.
spending slots, slots on
Dragonstorm
saltines,
being one option that people were so excited to come on the archive that I was very sad when it didn't. Though,
It even has
It's
flavor
here now.
justification.
yes. They could have just thrown a few extra dragons into the main set. Like, the Elder Dragons aren't the only dragons that need to be on Strixhaven.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
just like
now,
yeah,
actual use in Gladiator, right? We have technically been able to Dragonstorm for a little while with the use of a card by the name of Sarkin Dragon Soul, which if you don't know what this card is, I don't blame you. It is the Planeswalker deck card from
M19
Core 2019.
yeah.
Yes.
Where the first two abilities on Sarkin are awful. I believe it's +1 to deal 1 damage to target opponent and each of the creatures they control.
Yes.
-3 to do a useless thing, and then ultimate at like -9 or -8 to search for every dragon in your deck and put it into play.
Yep.
Which kind of
It is a
jumps-
-9, just so you know.
-9, yeah. Kind of jumps pretty quickly in like useless to game winning.
It was part of one of the best ultimatum piles for like a week.
Yeah, it was
one of the first
you could
combo
use,
decks in the format.
Yeah, because you could use Dragon Soul and Planeswide Celebration to force an instant ult, and getting a bunch of dragons into play often won the game. I believe there was a win from there. It wasn't
because we had
smooth
all of the things that caused a win at that time already. It
Did
was
you?
because you had
you didn't have Terror of the Peaks
or Terror
you
of
had
Mount Velas.
2 haste
we didn't have
dragons, and you had Terror of Mount Velus,
Okay, so
which
it
let
like
you
20
have
damage. Yeah,
you had
Yeah.
11 power with haste and double strike,
And then whatever other dragons you were playing as well.
Yeah, but you had to play like, I think you had to play Volcanic Dragon, didn't you?
You had to play
Yes.
Volcanic Dragon. That is the
Yeah.
cost of it.
because we didn't have Glorybringer at that time either. Yeah.
No Glorybringer, none of the other haste dragons.
Yeah. Well, we had Dargaz.
Yeah, but you didn't.
Yeah.
Did you even have You might have had Skargan Hellkite at that point.
Maybe. No, we definitely did.
You had to have.
No,
It was
yeah.
Skargan Hellkite was from sets years ago.
Yeah, no.
Anyway,
we've had
but,
that the whole
okay.
time.
Now Dragonstorm piles are much cleaner, where it is first dragon you get is Terror of the Peaks. Second dragon you get is Lathliss Dragon Queen, 6 damage to your opponent's face. Third dragon you get is Varagaz, the 7/7 with haste. 7 damage to your face from the Varagaz, 5 damage to face from the Lathliss trigger. That totals to be 18 damage. If you have 2 to activate Lathliss, you can add 2 to the face damage from Terror of the Peaks. And if not, you can still attack for 7 with your hasty Jund Dragon.
Yeah.
I will say there is, in technicality, a pile that wins for Storm 2 with
But it's only 14 damage.
It is
So you
only
need to find a
14
6
damage
otherwise.
If you have a 3-power creature, it is a win. Because Terror of Mount Velas gives all creatures double strike. That pile being you get Dargaz first, then you get Terror of Mount Velas, and then as long as you have either done 6 damage or have a 3-power creature in play, you win. Because you deal 20 damage.
I agree with you, but I think you actually don't play Terror of Mount Velas in these decks. We've been talking about it, and I think it's not useful.
Yeah,
And
and I think most of the time, if you plan on hard casting Dragonstorm to get your Storm, then you might want a X=2 option. However, if you're just planning on
even X
using
=2
Emergent Ultimatum, you're going to get 3 each time.
I don't plan on using Emergent either. I just plan on
you want to use Mythic Mastery exclusively, apparently.
I mean, I don't think you need to play Emergent in that deck, but I mean, you can. You can just you can
there's
mastery.
no harm in doing so.
Yeah.
Another time.
So
yeah,
I think that you still do 14 damage by getting Terror of the Peaks into Varagaz. Like, the only thing that Terror of Mount Velas does is make it such that you do a little bit extra damage with the creatures that are already in play.
Right.
Which I don't think is
it's well.
Yeah. So we talk a lot with Dragonstorm.
I would actually prefer to be playing the reanimation dragon to rebuy a Terror of the Peaks if I lost one.
Right. Yeah. That is one. That is definitely one that should be in the deck. Blade Wing. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about dragons that can be in the library. Another card that cares about cards in the library is Grizzly Salvage, which is green-black for an instant, and it says reveal the top 5 cards of your library, put up to 1 creature or land card from among them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. I love filling up my graveyard.
Yeah, Grizzly Salvage is
It's good.
upwards of +6
Yeah,
into your yard.
it can fuel any escape card other than Ox of Agonis just by itself.
Yep, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
This is a very fine card. It's instant speed, which is sweet. It is perfectly cromulent.
A card that's it's just good.
Talk to the residents of Springfield.
So Grizzly
speaking
Salvage,
of
I
cards
think
that
reference, by
are
the way.
real. Yes, I got the reference.
I know, but I'm talking to our friend in Norway.
Our editor wants us to think that cromulent is a made-up word, and they're a coward. Anyway, the next card is Into the North. It's 1 and a green for a sorcery, and it says, search your library for a snow land card, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, and then shuffle. Oh my god, they gave us better rampant growth.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Yeah.
wait, no, Seismic. You did the perfect throw on accident. Find Faceless Haven.
Oh yeah, it finds Faceless Haven.
It does find Faceless Haven.
Oh man, Into the North is so good.
Yeah, we already used our swear on Heckin' Saltines, but like this card's real good.
Yeah, so good. Why are they giving us this? Why are they giving us rampant growth?
I remember seeing Emergent Sequence and being like, oh hey, they gave us a
Worse
reasonable rampant growth alternative. And then
And
they
then they
gave us
a better
this
one.
as well. Like, okay.
So
It finds dual lands.
yeah,
Yes,
this
it
sure does find the dual tap lands that have land types, and they've already been seeing play because they have land types, and now they can be found off of Into the North.
Okay,
I'm excited to play this card in most decks. It is good.
To calm down a little bit,
No,
I play a Teamer lands deck, and my first draft of the deck included Snow because I wanted to play Merit Lage's Slumber. And the Snow synergies were kind of middling, and I didn't really have a that competitive or powerful of a reason to use Snow. And being 3-color, I kind of had to use a lot of dual lands, so I couldn't have too many Snow lands anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Into the North just means I'm playing Snow anyway, so I might as well play Merit Lage's Slumber and maybe Yorn.
get a land from Into the North. You get to
I don't think
scry.
Yorn is good even
I'm
in that
in.
situation, personally.
No,
But that's
Yorn's
just
not
me.
good in that.
Yorn's not great, but Into the
I'm
North
deeply
is
disappointed in Yorn.
Into the North is so free of a reason to play Snowlands that
So you don't
now
actually need to play full Snowlands.
you can just play a few. Play a few and then
Into the North
dual lands.
honestly is kind of fine playing Snowlands the same way you play Snowlands in
Tainted Pact?
Tainted Pact list.
I plan on
think
putting
I
this
want-
in decks with Tainted Pact.
Well, even
Oh, yeah.
even when you're not playing Tainted Pact, I think if you're only doing Into the North and don't have other Snow synergies, just having the Snow duels and maybe 1 or 2 of the Snow basics of the colors you need is fine.
Yeah, I was doing the math. I think you want at least 2 Snow basics of your primary color, and then I think it's fine. If you are desperate to not play Snow basics, either because you're worried about fighting a Redain or other
there's
purposes,
very little reason to play more than the Snow basics you need because of Redain. I know it is a small amount of percentage points benefit, but I don't think there's any reason not to take that benefit if you don't have to go full Snow.
Yeah, I think you need to be around 7 or 8 lands is where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of 2-mana cards in this historic anthology. None of them are as exciting as Into the North, but our next one's kind of
Not
exciting.
for us, at least.
It's Intangible Virtue. It's 1 and a white for an enchantment that says creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. And I guess I'm playing tokens just as a normal strategy now and not inherently trying to like transmogrify into a Crater Hoof all the time. Maybe I can just play tokens now.
Yeah, I think there's...
I'm just kind of sad because I can't use Shrine of Loyal Legions with Tangible Virtue. We're not getting that card for a while, I don't think.
Probably
or ever.
not.
There's a fairly good chance we never get it.
I know. Partially because it would go Shrine of Burning Rage and people... Though there actually might be reason to do it because that shrine is a fun one in cubes and such.
Yeah.
At least I'm told.
Yeah. Intangible Virtue's good if you're already doing token stuff. If you're not doing token stuff, why are you looking at this card?
Yeah, and also
let's move on to
good
another.
If you're doing like really heavy token stuff.
Yeah, if like you're the kind of person who said, I'm going to play a deck entirely filled with token and no non-token creatures except for, I don't know, Ellaschnorn and Crater Hoof Behemoth.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's for that type of deck.
Yeah,
don't put this in your Mardu
for
Pyromancer list. Like this doesn't go with Young Pyro and such more witch and stuff.
Please don't.
If I see this in a Pyromancer list, I'm going to
if you build Mardu tokens,
computer
that would be interesting.
But
them. Even then, I don't think you're going to be heavy enough on tokens to be able to make this card worth it.
Yeah, we're kind of missing like the raw token generation for that kind of stuff.
Speaking of cards, you're going to need to work a lot to get value off of. Our next card is Ichor Wellspring.
Ichor.
I don't know. I've gotten either way on that pronunciation. But Wellspring is a 2-mana artifact, and whenever it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. And I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I mean, it goes in eggs. I'm not entirely sure how much I'm going to be doing with this in eggs, but it's going to be going in eggs.
I have said a few times that if we ever get Delver's Secrets on Arena, there are going to be some people who play a terrible card for way too long before realizing it's bad. I believe this is the same case.
Okay. I've thought about this a lot more, thinking about the eggs. This card is very good in other formats and is not as good here as I think the point that UFO is getting at.
Yeah.
Because
Ichor
Wellspring works really well when you have ways to sacrifice your artifacts for value outside of them doing it themselves, which a lot of our eggs already do in the quote eggs decks that exist. There's 2 ways to do that on Arena as it stands that I'm aware of, which is the dude that makes Thopters, Master Thopterist, and Defiant Salvager, I believe. Like those are the 2 things that sacrifice artifacts.
There's one very specific one.
Yeah, the rest are in red, which most eggs decks aren't really in yet. There's
there's one very, very specific reason I want to play this card.
Okay.
Wait, and this is the sacrifice loop that hasn't come to mind, and that is what's it called? Sorry, Ichor card is on Metalwork Colossus. Metalwork Colossus loops.
Oh,
where this allows you to start drawing your deck. So I think that you are right in saying that like just throwing this in a paradox list, I do not think is good.
No,
doing some like Galazeth Prismari shenanigans.
Yeah, and even then, I would prefer to look at like a prophetic prism.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Many powers that go in before Ichor Wellspring, which means you have to be really wanting this effect to do it. which some decks will
So yeah,
have.
the
but
point
not
that
every deck
matters on Metalwork Colossus, just for those that haven't seen this card before, it is 11 mana, but it's cost reduced based on non-creature artifacts that you control, and you can sacrifice 2 artifacts to return it from your graveyard. A loop that has started showing up in these eggs deck is it's this with Witch's Oven and Paradox Engine. You get to get infinite cash triggers as long as you have 11 CMC worth of non-creature permanents, because it makes 2 artifacts when you sacrifice it to Witch's Oven. And while maybe Ichor Wellspring still isn't good enough there, the fact that I obviously I don't have anything yet, but the fact that you can start like feeding Ichor Wellspring into Metalwork Colossus while doing these loops has me thinking.
Yeah, I just think it's no different than a lot of the the eggs that exist with
Sure.
on Arena already, which means it's just gonna be another thing. It's not opening any doors that haven't already been possible. It's just making them a little bit easier. Is what I think.
That is possible, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of not opening any doors that haven't already been possible, Merfolk Looter is 1 in a blue. A 1/1 Merfolk Rogue that says tap, draw a card, then discard a card. It
discards
nothing
cards.
bad. I'm not too excited about it though.
I'm not excited about it, but it's just this is one of those cards like talking about like Delver circuits coming on Arena and people playing good cards. I think it's something similar to that, but I think the fact that they are willing to give us cards like that opens a lot of doors, because these are the kinds of cards that are like shut off because they used to be very powerful in specific situations.
Yeah.
Like, I do think it is worth saying that like in the blue-red GPG decks and the density of effects that we get like this is always going to be very good for those decks.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And while this is not the best mode for it, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for saying this because of the tempo players that exist, there might be a time where it is correct. Where it is correct for tempo to play things like this, because it needs to leverage card advantage, card creation, needs to pick answers or specific answers. And might. I want to be very clear in saying might, but this is one of those cards like this is where people card filtration that starts with draw a card and doesn't start with discard a card.
There's a question in chat. 1 second.
This actually to answer that question, this is where loot comes from as a word in Magic.
I'm not so sure actually.
And if it's not, I'd be fairly surprised.
What
we have
what
Cephalid
set,
Looter as well.
When was Dark Ascension printed?
It's not Faithless Looting, I know that.
No.
Merfolk Looter is old bordered.
Yeah,
and
Merfolk Looter originated in Exodus.
Exodus, okay.
Yeah.
It's definitely where loot came
Merfolk
from.
Looter. I think there might have been a different card that was also a looter.
There is Cephalid Looter, but that's also from a few years later.
Yeah.
Merfolk Looter probably is the card that started that.
Speaking of what we're doing right now is reverse engineer. For 3 blue sorcery, improvise, draw 3 cards.
I'm gonna assume you finished that because I could not hear it.
Everyone's okay with that?
No clue.
I mean, we can't stop it.
The card.
Yeah, we are.
I mean,
we are caught in the whims of live stream.
Yes. So drawing 3 cards is good. 5 mana to draw 3 cards is about average in our format. You know, we've got Graven Lore and Precognitive Perception that have been popular choices. Sorcery speed kind of hurts, though.
Yeah.
If this was an instant, I'd be kind of all over it. if I tend not to like in artifact decks playing improvised spells that aren't also like artifacts or don't also help specifically like eggs type strategies in some way.
Yeah.
I'm interested in this card, but I also feel like if you want to be playing it over other options, you need to be able to consistently cast it for 3 or 4, so that it's not worse than other available options, and then be using artifacts in a way that tapping them for improvise here isn't bad, which feels weird, and I'm not sure where it goes.
I'm interested to see what this card does, but I'm not willing to test it out myself.
Yeah,
I think
all right.
people will
Hear me
try it
out.
in
I've
Paradox,
got the.
but
Sorry.
I'm not convinced that it'll be better than just other draw effects that are possible.
I think it might be fine in the more eggs version of Paradox, where you're playing a lot more of the cards that like they ETB draw a card, then they sack for an effect later. When you don't need that effect, you can use them for improvised effects. I've done that before, and obviously, like, this is not the best improvised card, but it's it is draw 3 cards. But more specifically, I want to play this in like the Jeskai or Bant esque lists as blue draw 3 cards, tapping things that don't matter to tap them.
Fair.
I don't know if it is good enough in those lists, as those lists are very specific in what they need to do, but it is something interesting to test. That is where my mind is at right now.
Yeah.
Where I want this to be, because I'm thinking from a mindset of other formats, and maybe that's wrong, but I'm thinking of other formats where you're playing. This card gets compared a lot to Thoughtcast, which I think is 4 in a blue Metalcraft draw 2.
4 in a blue I think 4 of blue affinity for artifacts draw 2.
Yes, not Metalcraft.
Yeah.
Affinity, not Metalcraft.
The broken effect that came out of that set.
I want to use it kind of like that, where it's a refill, and I think that maybe there's like an equipment list that plays enough equipment that you can consistently cast this for 2 or 3 mana as a refill, basically.
Maybe.
Yeah. I want to be casting this for 2 mana a good portion of the time, 3 mana most of the other times, and then maybe occasionally 4 mana. But if I'm casting this at 5 mana, I've lost the moral victory.
Yeah, for sure. But like I could see tapping
literal victory as well.
Yeah. I could see tapping like a Maul of the Skyclaves and the Bone Splitter, draw 3 cards. That seems pretty good.
Speaking of artifacts, our next card is one. It's Relic of Progenitus. It's 1 mana for an artifact. It has tap. Target player exiles a card from their graveyard, and 1 exile Relic of Progenitus to exile all cards from all graveyards and draw a card. I think this is a interesting card outside of artifact decks, and I think specifically in artifact decks, it's probably not great.
No, you care about your graveyard too much when you're playing artifact decks.
It also doesn't sacrifice it. You can't get it back ever.
Yeah.
But I will say, this is a good card, right? It's very good graveyard hate, but when it's not good graveyard hate, it's 2 mana draw a card,
which is not good enough.
Somewhat. I think the way you kind of need to think about this card is, do you care about your own graveyard? If you at all do, which most decks do, then the upside is somewhat negated by the fact that you're losing your own graveyard. But it does you just basically can cycle it. It's 2 mana to draw a new card. So it's not outside of the range of things that we have discounted for being a little niche because of the cycling aspect.
Yeah. And
that said, you don't need to play Relic of Progenitus as much as some people are probably going to play Relic of Progenitus.
If this card
Yeah.
shows up, I think it's going to show up in like a mono white deck, and there's going to be a lot of times that they will look at Relic of Progenitus and think, I have Scavenger Grounds in my deck. Why am I not just relying on Scavenger Grounds? And that's like,
Scavenger
if
Grounds
the
is
meta
really
gets to a
good.
point, like if the meta gets to a point where we need more than one of that type of effect of mass graveyard hate, then because like mono white, like even mono white now has targeted graveyard hate. It has Apostle of Purifying Light, which
And
is
it also
really
has,
good and should be seen.
Remorseful Cleric.
Yep.
Yeah, like you
Yeah,
have a
Remorseful
lot of
Cleric as well, like-
options for getting rid of the graveyard, and I think every color except red and to a lesser extent blue.
Green does actually struggle a bit. It has
Yeah,
some
so
more
it's
like prolific ones and scavenging use
Yeah.
and such, but it's just those. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that one even.
Basically, if this card shows up, it's because the decks need more of those effects and don't care about it being on a creature. Because like even mono green, while it does have Death Gorge Scavenger as well, whatever that card is
Yes, it
called.
does.
Like
So card's decent.
So it's just one of those things like card's decent, not like it's not gonna be an auto include, but it's gonna be a card that always sits on your back pocket, and especially as a common as well. It's just one of those cards like you're never gonna feel horrible playing this.
It's
and
like
it's gonna be fine.
I think Relic Progenitus is going to be the ratchet bomb of this anthology.
I forgot
I've
we
played
had
so
Ratchet
little
Bomb.
Ratchet
We
Bomb.
do
Yep.
have Ratchet Bomb.
I actually do like the idea of Relic of Progenitus in a deck like Paradorks, where you have a reason to be casting a cheap spell that also draws you a card, and you don't care about your graveyard as much as like other decks.
That is fair. I'll get back to you when Paradorks is playable again.
Valid. Speaking of things that
Yeah.
aren't playable right now,
Yeah.
uh,
I know. I said Ichor Wellspring is the Delver of this set, but
the real Delver of this set costs 1 blue mana,
yeah,
and it's Stifle. Stifle is a single blue for an instant that says counter target activated or triggered ability. Someone else make this argument. I'm too tired.
I
This
need to
card's
talk
not
to you all
good.
about something called confirmation bias, where you have a card in your deck, and it works once. It functions, and you get to do a thing and feel smart once. And then you never cut the card. That's Stifle.
On
That's
the
Mhm.
on the other hand, Stifle is the kind of card that you only will see it when it's incredible.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
when it's not incredible, it's going to be stuck in your opponent's hand,
'Cause they
and you're
literally can't
probably not
cast
going
it.
to see it. We have better ways to have the same kind of effect as this card that are more wide in how they can be used and are just generally better. And Stifle, frankly, is so narrow that even when it does its job, you're probably not doing it on a target that is good. Like if you stifle a fetch and it like is what changes the course of the game, you might have already been winning anyway. Like, and I think stifling a Fabled Passage is probably the best case scenario for this card. And in every
Yes.
other case, it's less than a card.
And then like
Yeah,
so
so
there's also like there's the what if, right? There's the you can create scenarios where Stifle will be good, right? Where I would say, but what if my opponent has a Muyanling at 8 and just ultimated it? Stifle
Like-
answers that problem,
what
right?
if you eliminated it before that happens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
yeah.
Your
Also,
problem is
thing
that
with
you let Muyan Lang get to ultimate range.
yeah,
The
Yeah.
other problem is that your
Uh,
opponent let Muyanling get to ultimate range, but that's a different conversation entirely.
Yeah, so the effect of Stifle is not bad. Countering an activated or triggered ability is good, but as especially a lot of people mentioning in chat will say, and I will
It's the
mimic what they say there.
Copy of this effect that we have on Arena.
Yeah, we have Tail's End, which can be a Stifle or can
Counter a questing beast.
Yeah, counter questing beast, counter legendary spell. We have Stifle Bird. It came to us in Amonkhet. We can cycle
Nimble
for 3 mana. We can draw a card and stifle an ability from an opponent. We have Disallow, which is also a counter spell. Hell, if you want to go even deeper, we have Replicate/Repudiate. And Repudiate is blue or green, and then it's also a copy spell.
And Whirlwind Denial, which functions as a stifle, and Sublime Epiphany, which is a stifle.
And also a lot of other things, yeah. And
also
so
a lot of other things. I think there's at least one other way to stop triggered abilities.
Probably nothing I can think of.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is like one other thing.
The point that we are trying to make here is that while you will hear a lot of stories of Stifle being the best card that ever showed up, but that is because there are a lot of ways to sort of, in the formats where that shows up, it can be very abusive because there's these things called fetch lands, where most of the lands have triggered abilities that if those triggers get countered, you win the game. And we just do not have that. We have Fabled Passage, we have Evolving Wilds, we have Terramorphic Expanse. I can tell you, I've had my Fabled Passage Tails Ended. I still won that game. It hurt though. But Stifle is not the card that gets a slot in because there's just so many. There's this metric load of targeted abilities that it's like it's worthwhile. It's nuts. We have more flexible options right now, and right now flexibility matters so much.
Speaking of, actually, okay, flexibility isn't a great throw for our next card, but our next card is more flexible than Stifle.
You can flex metal, like you melt it down, it starts getting more flexible. Our next card is Transfer Treasure. 2 and a red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. Lightning, how do you feel about this card? It's everything.
Joker.
Hello?
Do you have nothing to say about this card?
Yeah, you're the one.
I have a lot to say. I thought Lightning would also want to. Okay, fine. No. All right, here we go.
Go off.
This card is insane.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Right. But yeah,
you
go
are
off.
fine. Okay. Mardu GPG, aka Mardu Refurbish. This, yes. 3 mana. For 3 mana, we get to put a Godfarer's Gift into play. We get to put a Godfarer's Gift into play. We get to sacrifice, I don't know, Stonecoil Serpent. Then we get a 4/4 Stonecoil Serpent back going into combat. Or, who knows, we get to also sacrifice, I don't know, anything else. Just like, there's so many good artifacts that you can play on the cheap that help the strategy that you can just like throw them away, get back, I don't know, a Combustible Gear Hulk. You can do so much with this card. And it is so cheap. It is 3 mana. Also, like, it is an uncommon, which shouldn't matter, but sometimes it does. It is an uncommon. It can do so much. And the downside on this is that it is an additional cost to sacrifice the artifact, which is a downside. But it can allow a strategy like Mardu GPG to go faster, which is what it needs to do things. It needs to be able to go faster sometimes. Yeah, it's redundancy. It gets to be another refurbish. And it also gets to be a cheaper refurbish. The more ways we have to set up an active GPG on turn 3 with fuel, is the more ways that we can actually beat, say, like an aggro deck like mono red.
Yeah, like
Like
speed is key for
giving-
a lot of combo decks,
Yeah.
and GPG is no different. And Trash for Treasure is, I think, the second fastest theoretical way to put a Godfarer's Gift into play.
Yeah. Also, just
So,
like
I will note, though,
yeah,
I will note, you may look at Trash or Treasure and think that it is an artifact version of Blood for Bones. And there's a key difference there that is hard to... It's not going to come into play most times, but just remember that Trash or Treasure cannot sacrifice an artifact and immediately bring it back.
Yeah, it does
At part of the
target.
same
So.
cost. It does target, which means Trash or Treasure, unlike some other things, does get got by targeted graveyard hate, where something like a Blood for Bones or a Jar of Mirror Lake or a Concoct, Side of Connive Concoct, where you're putting things in your graveyard and then returning a choice.
Yeah.
There's a difference between target and choose, and it doesn't always come up in one's mind, but
If it's going to come
need
up
to build-
anywhere, it's probably going to come up here. Though.
I need
yeah,
to,
for sure.
I
That
need
is
to build
something.
Citadel combo with this.
yeah, exactly. Like Citadel's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Also, just like 2 in a red, get a Balls of Citadel into play. 2 in a red, get just. There's so many things that this can get into play that just like the game's over, and like
And like here's a reason
just-
to be playing
it's so
Ichor
nice.
Wellspring.
yeah, here's a reason to be playing Ichor Wellspring. Good thing to sacrifice to that. Just like this card allows for a lot of interesting interactions if you just like take a moment to like peel back it just returns big dumb artifact. Yes, but it can return a big dumb artifact. It needs you just need to like take them all and be like, but what big dumb artifacts could we play? We can return I don't know chromatic orrery. Sometimes you need to do that. Like we have
we
stuff
got
that we can do
options.
with this card.
Mink, isn't Trash or Treasure Duretti? I thought Trash or Treasure was Duretti art.
I think that is. It
Not
might
this
be from
art.
before Duretti's. Yeah.
I think
Not
this-
it's
this
Mirrodin
is-
art,
No.
but it is a goblin.
Yeah, this is a generic goblin on Mirrodin. There's one in the commander deck with Duretti, but it has the same art.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Speaking
guess.
of artifacts to
But
put
Duretti's a
into Trash for
planeswalker.
Treasure.
Also,
is it
this
a-
goblin does have hair.
Yeah, it's a hairy boy. All the goblins,
I-
some of
Yeah,
the
this
goblins
is-
on
It's just kind of
Mirrodin
How,
obscured by the
how many
That
hair
was quite a
follicles
walk
does this
back.
goblin have? How many hair follicles does this goblin have?
I can tell you how many arms our next card
Yo,
has.
we're live. We can't cut the counting of that.
I mean,
Sure, we
there's
don't have to
two.
cut it.
Were we going to anyway? Our next card has 2 arms.
Two wings
and that's
and 2
Vault
legs.
Scar. Yes. A normal amount of body parts. and
Also,
that's-
did you notice that
Ignoring the
Vault
teeth.
Scourge has the phyrexian symbol as pupils?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Teeth.
Vault Scourge
teeth,
is
teeth.
1 and a phyrexian black for a 1/1 artifact creature imp with 2 words in its text box. Flying and lifelink. So Phyrexian black can be paid with either 2 life or a black, meaning that you can put this in any deck you want. And it goes into, well, a lot more decks than just
Aggro
black
decks.
decks and decks with Healer's Hawk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This card's good.
do you
Aside from
have
the value you get
Bone
off
Splitter in your deck?
Rakdos the Showstopper. But
like do you have a Bone Splitter in your deck? This card is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a
you
lot of
want a
decks.
curious obsession with this?
Do it.
Yes. Yes.
At the
yes.
start of the format, a lot of decks struggled with having enough 1-drops that they had to play very bad 1-drops. And so I remember there was a point where goblins and mono red in general played real stinkers of 1-drops, in that if it was a creature with 1 power, it was good enough.
Even
Yeah.
the downside.
Yeah, like you could play real stinkers of 1-drops, and Vault Scourge by itself will raise the floor for what you can play as a 1-drop for not just mono red or not just mono white, but every aggro deck can play better 1-drops now.
Yeah, just like the more times that we get to cut literal actual raging goblin, like just like more times we get to cut like just the bad ones and just get to play as like this is an evasive 1-drop. And it has a relevant keyword, and as UFO mentioned, like there's gonna be times where you slap Bone Splitter on this, and that's gonna win you the game. You're gonna gain 3 life every turn, and they're gonna die. Turn like we saw with Strixhaven, that Lightning Helix is an insane card. What if you just had like you just like, oh, I just equipped this with a Bone Splitter, and now there's a 6 life delta every single turn, and I'm on mono red. Just like how do you beat it?
Vault Scourge also has the interesting interaction with Phyrexian mana in that most of the time it will recuperate its Phyrexian mana cost so that you can, if it attacks twice, which it's a flyer, so a lot of decks won't quickly have tools to deal with that unless they want to spend removal on a 1-drop. It will gain you that life back. And in the cases where it doesn't, it means your opponent is spending resources to make that happen.
Also, this is a creature that doesn't die to Doomblade in decks that can go in decks where your creatures normally die to Doomblade.
That is true.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a flying 1/1 artifact.
Yeah, there's just a lot going on with this card that makes it very good.
Yeah, you can do a lot of interesting synergies with this card, or frankly, you can largely forego those synergies and say, here's my 1-mana 1/1 flyer. Spend a card to deal with it, or it's going to kill you in 8 turns.
Yeah.
Not on its own, but like
just
it'll kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of
this is
1/1 flyers, or do you need to finish your thought, Joker?
No, you're fine.
Yeah, so speaking of 1/1 flyers, we also got this cool 4-mana thing from Origins, actually. Who remembers that set?
That was actually the
card that everyone thinks.
This card was, I think, my favorite card out of Origins, and
it was my favorite card out of Origins too. It makes Thopters. It does cool things with those Thopters. For 2 blue and blue, it's Thopter Spy Network, an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control an artifact, put a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying onto the battlefield. And whenever one or more artifact creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. I've been playing this card for a while. I really like it, and I'm really glad to be getting it. So, to make a bunch of tokens consistently, having that sort of flying aspect. What do you mean?
Yeah, what's happening?
UFO. What if I told you we weren't getting that card in this historic anthology, and instead we were getting a better card?
I wouldn't believe you.
Okay, so we're getting a better card.
We're getting Whirler
Rogue. It's 2 blue for a...
No, the one from Origins. Thopter Spy Network. 2 blue.
All good. It's a human rogue artificer that is a 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, it makes 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact tokens with flying. And then it also has this cool little ability where you can tap 2 untapped artifacts you control and make a creature unblockable this turn. And I don't know if this card has a great home, but I want it to have a home because I love it.
This is another like chink in the armor for like a blue-white artifacts deck, honestly.
Yeah.
Or like even like a red. Honestly, this is the kind of card that I could see like making like a more artifact-centric blue-red GPG deck with. Like this and Pia and
And then
So
also just the fact that it makes the tokens as an ETB. You may want to have gotten like an ephemerate or something recently. I don't know.
Don't
Yeah,
remind
and
me.
it's like, and it's a strictly better Goblin Gang Leader because it makes tokens with flying.
the
As you said that,
Where?
so Whirler Rogue, for me, the place I see its home most is that it has an ability to tap the things that it just made to make a creature unblockable. And the fact that it's just a repeatable once each turn a creature can't be blocked, and it also comes with a body, and potentially once it dies, because it's a 2/2 for 4 mana, it also has 2 bodies it's leaving behind that fly and kill your opponent. It's this card has a lot of potential to kind of blow out a game, and if you're creating a board stall, this will make any creature unblockable, and still you leave behind a creature when you do that. It also notably can just it's a 4/4 for 4 spread across 3 bodies, but like still it's a 4/4 for 4 4/4 for 4.
4, 4,
And
4, 4, 4, 4.
yeah, and half of it flies. That's pretty good. Those are generally good stats, and I think generally a lot of decks don't have good ways to deal with a good amount of small flyers. And Whirler Rogue will test those decks to make sure that that is the case.
Yeah, the amount of times that this allows you to block a Glorybringer is going to be very funny. Where like the Glorybringer player is like, I just kill their flyer. They have 2 flyers. What?
Yeah, this stops big flyers. It also makes it so that it's harder to attack with flyers because then you get hit on the crackback. And generally, even if you kill any one body from Whirler Rogue, the card still is A, doing its job, and B, effective at doing such.
yeah, I think the thing about this card, Roller Rogue, and cards like it, token creation and other enter battlefield value, is that, well, the idea is you want to have a card that you're at least okay playing on its own, which I'm hearing we're kind of okay playing this on its own, in theory. And then once you start getting more synergy within it, then you're really letting it sing. And it seems like at least there's some ideas going around right now to start letting Warlord Rogue sing.
Honestly, I think that Whirl Rogue is one of those cards that's just gonna it's gonna sit around for a bit, and then it's just gonna be like, wow, this card allowed more blue mid-range decks to exist.
Yeah, and then
just like this, what this reminds me a lot of is like a card that sort of unlocked like the grindy mid-range decks in the green red, not in this format but in others. Huntmaster of the Fells. I'm not going to go too deep on what it is, but like just like it's one of those cards that's like everything it does is deeply internally synergistic, and it's just nice. It's just like this is just one of those cards like this is just nice to cast.
I think my favorite thing is that this card very well might just like fall off the radar for a bit, and then one day like Effie and JR are going to be commentating a Gladiator tournament, and we're going to see blue-green mid-range, and they're going to be like, okay, I haven't seen this deck like in a while or before at all. And then they see someone like completely wrecking by making an Elder Gargaroth unblockable, or like, oh, I played Galta, and then next turn Whirler Rogue make Galta unblockable, kill you. Like, people are going to probably sleep on this card more than they should be, but when people stop sleeping on this card, people are going to be so excited because it creates amazing magic.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at too. It's like it's one of those cards like when it shows up, it's just gonna be like, this feels nice, and then you're like, oh god, what did I just do with this card?
And
like,
now I'm kind of asking a similar question, except it's what do I do with this podcast?
We go on to the next segment, which is, hi, we are here, and this has been a good stream.
Actually, while we're bringing things down, I want to talk a bit about Ripjaw Raptor.
Okay.
Okay.
I've been playing that card. Ripjaw Raptor I added to Gruul about two and a half weeks ago, and it has consistently overperformed in every matchup I've been trying it out in.
Oh yeah, card's busted.
It's a 4-mana 4/5 that draws
4
cards,
mana
yeah?
4/5 with upside, where you draw cards if your opponent interacts with it in many of the normal ways to interact with a creature.
Or just attacks. Like
That's one of the ways you interact with a creature, yes.
is UFO, am I hearing you right? Is this like the birth of a new segment?
Maybe?
The birth of the new segment, and we call it, why are you not playing this card?
Here's a concept. This could be a new segment if people tell us that it's a good segment. What if we had like some place to garner those kinds of opinions on whether or not a new segment would be a good idea or something?
Well, you're saying like maybe if they went to the Gladiator podcast Discord that
something
is
like
going
that.
to post a link to in chat because they're amazing, and maybe you could go talk in, say, an episode discussion channel where you can tell us what you think about the idea of us talking about cards that we enjoy playing.
I definitely would, just going back to the conversation, if you have the extra rare wild card and you're wanting to make your green mid-range decks better against red-based aggro and control, craft a Ripjaw Raptor. It will do everything you're looking for. 5 toughness means that it's not that easy to remove without giving you several instances of value, or using some very premium removal that doesn't interact damage-wise. And it's a really good threat when you're not trying to defend against aggro. It just does kind of everything you want. Once I find myself tutoring for a card, like over, say, Shifting Ceratops or Elder Greg or other ones, like it finds a home that way.
You want to know where else people can find a home, UFO?
What is it? The Gladiator Podcast
the Patreon?
Twitter? No, Gladiator Podcast Twitter first.
Fine. The Twitter. You can go follow us on Twitter at GladiatorCast. This is where we're going to post whenever new episodes go live, and
things like
whenever we're going to do whenever we're going to do streams like this. This one was a bit more rushed, but in the future, when we were planning these things out, the links will be up as soon as we can. And this is going to be a thing that we're going to start doing depending on how you guys feel about it, obviously. And you can come here to find out. Make sure you subscribe here on Twitch as well, or follow. Sorry, follow Second Right Live, and turn on that notification. You'll see when we're going live.
Yeah, if you're on
for
mobile,
magic stuff, non-magic stuff.
Profile picture. If you're on desktop, there's a button below Lightning's profile picture.
Yeah, it's going to be on the right side.
And if you're listening to this on YouTube, thank you for watching on YouTube. Let us know in the comments below how you're thinking. And for all you lovely listeners through Spotify and other great places where podcasts are found, thank you so much. And as we were mentioning earlier, we have a Patreon for this. If you like supporting all of these goony things that we do, you like seeing us talk ridiculousness and talk about magic cards and explain why Ancient Grudge is an overplayed joke, and explaining the card of a 4-mana 4/4 beast, Ravenous Baloth. No, don't worry about it. Subscribe on the Patreon. Just, it helps us do this. It helps make this easier on all of us. It helps, we're doing this because we enjoy doing it, and being able to do more for everyone that's watching is, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to not stop.
Help keep the
Yeah,
I mean,
On an unrelated
lights
note,
on.
the lights will stay on anyway, but we can get more lights.
Help the FE have good lighting in their editing room.
Pretty much.
On an unrelated note, we should make more jokes about Ravenous Baloth.
God.
Yes.
Fair.
And
Although-
we should also make jokes about ending this stream.
Segue.
Segue.
I thought too much about starting the stream that I didn't think about how to end it, so we're all gonna say goodbye and we're gonna go back to the going live screen.
Very well.
Yes, we're going to be
This has
saying
been
goodbye, and we're going
the
to start by
Gladiator podcast.
sounding off. Thank you.
It's been Joker?
I've been UFO.
It's been Joker.
I've been Seismic Lawns.
And this has been Blightning.
And
And you have been the chat. Thank you for coming out.
yeah, and this has been Little FX Radio. Again, your Wizard
Magical
of Oz.
editor.
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz from Wish.com. Pushing the buttons behind the scenes. Thanks everyone for coming out. I'm gonna fade us out real quickly. Thanks. Bye.
Fade out, fade out,
Do 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 do. Bye bye.